All right, we are live on Facebook here with Michael King of iPullRank. Mike, why don't you start by telling the people a little bit about yourself and your story, because you've got an interesting one.
Cool. Greetings and salutations, good folks of the world. I'm Mike King. I'm the founder, managing director here at iPullRank. Well, here is not iPullRank. This is my penthouse apartment. Um, anyway, so my background is first in computer science. Been coding since I was 12. Then I ended up doing music for a living for 8 years. Toured a lot of different continents, doing hip hop and so on. And then I got into a bike accident and I didn't have health insurance, so I had to get a job to pay my medical bills. So the first place to hire me was an SEO agency. So I just kept, those jobs until my boss would piss me off and I go back on tour. And then at a certain point, I was like, if I stick with this SEO thing, maybe I can make a couple of dollars. And so I worked at, some unknown agencies, also worked at some bigger ad agencies like Razorfish and Publicis. Then I got involved in the SEO world and like speaking and things of that nature. And that all just kind of like snowballed. And so I got to the point where I was like, I should probably just do this myself. So very much aligns with my sensibilities of being like independent and figuring things out and so on. And here we are almost 6 years into iPullRank, and it's going pretty well.
In iPullRank, you guys do end-to-end digital, or you mostly SEO? How do you guys shake out? And I know you guys have gone through some changes lately, if you want to talk about that too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started the agency, I think I wanted to be more like full service because, just having all the experience that I just talked about, it comes up a lot of times where people are like, hey, we want to do this thing, and then they don't have all the capabilities to do it. But to do SEO the way that I've always believed it should be done, you end up with all the people you need to do all those bigger picture things. And so we do a lot of projects that are way bigger than SEO. But I would say the core of the work that we do is SEO and content strategy. And then on the back of that, because we grow trust with all of our clients, they'll be like, oh yeah, so you guys know a lot about machine learning. What can you do there? Or can you do our paid media? Or can you do social? And we end up being able to do that because the way I look at it is that, a lot of these other channels are just channel specific content strategy. And we're really good at content strategy. So we're able to take on that work effectively.
So when somebody signs an SEO contract with you and then says, hey, Mike, we really want to set up some remarketing ads, you already have the people in-house to do that.
Yeah.
Do you have dedicated advertising specialists? Or are your people kind of like cross-channel experts?
So I've always been into like that T-shaped marketer idea. And, one of the things I've always thought about when we look at hiring, I kind of think of it as people speaking multiple languages, right? And so let's say you are a designer and you're like, hey, I want to build my skills in development. I love that because those are people that are still curious, still trying to learn new things. And so as an example, our senior search manager, he's like an integrated search guy who is really good at SEO and really good at PPC. We don't have a ton of PPC projects, but when that stuff comes up, he can do it. So, we also look for opportunities for people to continue learning. We like support that. We pay for it and so on. So even if it isn't someone who's like a paid search specialist, we have someone that can do it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I actually heard Gaetano on a podcast the other day, and he killed it, man. He's an ex-employee of Mike. Really, really smart when he was talking about not just search, but really leveraging a bunch, like really advanced, like CMO level talk. I was really impressed with him.
Yeah, absolutely. So when he worked for us, his title was digital marketing analyst. And that's kind of like a catch-all for doing some of everything, right? Like he was doing content audits, he was doing SEO audits, he was doing link building, he was building out content strategy, like he was doing some of everything. And that was his first digital marketing role, and he got really exposed to a lot of stuff through us, and then continued being curious, like he learned how to learn while he worked with us, and then he's been able to just like continue to level up. I'm actually really proud of the stuff that he's accomplished since leaving us, because it's in a way it kind of acts like a case study. Not that I'm acting like I'm taking any sort of like credit for what he's done. He has really taking it upon himself to continue to build his skill set. And it's really cool to watch what he's accomplished, at the various companies that he's worked at, and also what he's been doing with Next T. He's a great guy.
He's a smart kid. And when it comes to hiring, do you have anything that you're looking for in particular when it comes to people? I think I remember seeing you somewhere post about like a test that you put people through. Are you doing like a combination of skills assessment, personality assessment? Like how do you find these kind of, because he's a stud, like how do you find people like that, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, there was nothing to really indicate that he was going to be awesome. Not to say that he wasn't an awesome person, because obviously he got the job. His background was one in music, which obviously resonates with me. But aside from like running social media for himself, he didn't really have much digital experience. And in fact, he was like an account manager, and that was the role that he applied for with us. But in the process, we go through like the screener like everyone else, and then we have individual meetings with the pod that the person would join, because we're organizing pods. A pod for us is like, SEO person, content strategist, analyst, and an account manager. And so they ask you all like the hard skills questions, and then the next stage is a project. So it's like a small project that would be representative of the work that you would do with us. It's not something that we would take from you and then sell it to a client. It's just like, here's a scenario, put together a presentation or whatever it is, depending on the role, and then you present to us as though we are that client. And in character, we ask you questions as though we're that client, and then at the end we all break character and ask standard questions, and you get to ask us questions. And it's really done by committee. It's not just me making the decision or the hiring manager making the decision. Like, we all weigh in on what it is that we like and don't like about the person. And then more often than not, the people that move forward, there's like a unanimous decision.
So those people, are you mostly hiring people with experience? Or are you taking anyone just kind of off like personality traits that you see them being able to grow into the position?
Yeah, it depends on the role. For obviously a more experienced role, you want a more experienced person. But in the case of Gaetano, that was like, I think he was like my second or third hire. So we were starting from the beginning. And I was really just looking for someone who, again, was curious and had that hustle in them, where they really were just, you could just tell he was going to work hard. And, he also just had a really good attitude about where he was at. And so ultimately, when he didn't get that original role as account manager, I was like, yeah, I think you might be a good analyst. And from jump, he was just like, yeah, give me all the books, tell me what to read online, what should I do? And he was just like all over it. So it's really looking for that curiosity, that drive, and that, I hate to say it because everyone says it, but that grit, like that ability to like persevere. And I can tell you all types of stories about Gaetano. There were times where he like spent the night in the office because he had a deadline, and he was just, he just had to get it done. So those are those X factors that you look for in people that are difficult to identify. But when you see somebody, you're like, oh no, that's it.
Yeah.
That's someone who's going to actually get this done.
And how many people do you guys have now at iPullRank?
Right now it's about 20.
All full-time in the city, right?
They're not all in the city. So we've actually started doing more remote roles as well.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember when we talked to Miami, you guys were moving offices, right? You're moving out of the WeWork into your own dedicated space. Did you guys go forward with that? Okay.
Yep.
And so I mean, what made you made the shift to I guess being more open to remote work?
It came. So let me preface this by saying that I am not good at managing remote resources. Like,
Gotcha.
I'll forget about somebody, like we'll be having a meeting. I'll be like, oh yeah, we have someone that does that. Like, dial that person in. And, so it's very much like an out of sight, out of mind type of thing. But with the COVID-19 thing, I've had to get a lot better at it. And also the team has had to get a lot better about like managing processes this way and so on. So I've always been reluctant to the idea of remote, but Fajr Muhammad, who has been with us off and on for years now, she moved back to Philly because she's working on a book. And, she was like a proven person who just crushed it. Like the same way that I was just telling you stories about Gaetano, I can tell you similar stories about Faja, but I'm not gonna put her out there in the streets like that. And so when she was like, "Hey, I want to move back to Philly and focus on this book," it was a no-brainer. It's like I know I can trust you to get things done. I know you're going to be communicative and offset my own shortcomings with managing remote resources. So that wasn't like even a question. And then also Chris Hart, who joined us, I don't know, like 9 months ago now. Someone I've known in the industry for a long time. You know, he's pretty senior in the space. He knows his stuff. He's been working remotely for years. He's also really amazing at being communicative. You know, he's the type of guy that'll like text me to make sure that that you know I'm up to date on whatever he's got going on and so on. So just having people that are being like very proactive about this and again just offset or complement or rather supplement my shortcomings as a manager of remote resources has really allowed us to be a lot more effective with it.
And do you think that's a product of the big agency, the Publicis vibe? Because I used to work at Sapient Nitro as a contractor years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it's crazy because then when you go and start your own agency, the culture and vibe is so much different, right? The Publicis, the Sapient Nitros, the Razorfish, like you're expected, like they don't tell you, but you're expected to be there. You might have to be there 10, 12, 14 hours a day. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and they don't play the remote work shit. You know what I mean? I mean, do you think that your mindset was kind of initially molded by, because that was your first agency experience, right? The big agency stuff.
No, I actually worked at a small SEO agency, my first SEO job, and the interesting thing was like so I got the job, like I said, because I needed to pay my medical bills. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to keep this job until, you know, the tour comes up. And I had my first European tour in November of 2006. I started that job in August of 2006. So I was like, cool, I'll just keep this for a minute. And then my boss, I went to him, I was like, yo, I got to quit because I'm about to go on this tour. I was like, you know, super hype about it. He was like, yo, you could just work from the road. Just take your laptop. I was like, what? And so, and you know, back then when we did SEO, or at least the company I worked at, they just gave us the keys to the site, and it's like you fix it. You
Yeah.
know, there was like no doing deliverables or anything like that. So I was really into the idea of working remotely. The only reason I had not been into like hiring people remotely was just because again I don't think I'm good at managing people that way, and there's a lot of opportunity for people that you know um, if they don't have the type of oversight that they need to work well remotely, we're all just going to be wasting time and money.
Right.
That's not what I'm trying to do. But as far as my experiences at Razorfish and Publicis, or yeah, Razorfish and Modem, um, Razorfish was super flexible for me because, you know, I was also a contractor similar to you, and I only had 24 hours a week. And at first, I was just so intent on getting the full-time job because they did have open headcount, but my background wasn't working in a big agency, so I didn't have that polish, so to speak. Like again, I was used to just working on sites, not writing about working on
Yeah.
sites. And so they were like, yeah, we'll hire you because you know your stuff, but we don't think you know this world, basically. And so, you know, I was doing all types of stuff like building tools and all this, but like they were letting me come in at like 1 in the afternoon if I wanted to. And, you know, I was like spreading it across the whole week so I could get the FaceTime and all that. But then once it just became clear that they didn't really respect what I was doing or value me in that way, I was like, cool, let's make this Tuesday through Thursday. And then I can just go do shows on the weekend and get my money up and blah, blah, blah. And then when I worked at Modem, um, you know, I also still had a lot of flexibility because I was working in New York, and at first I was still commuting from Philly. And so, you know, I could get into the office at like 11 or whatever, and wasn't that big a deal. So again, like I just came from so much flexibility, and I had expectations of that, but I just knew that me as a manager, I wasn't great at managing people in that way.
And what ultimately made you want to leave the big agency? Was there any like, you know, I know what made me leave personally, but was there anything that kind of drove you to want to open up your own shop? Because it is a big jump, man. A lot of people in the big agency worlds I don't want to say that they're lifers, but they're lifers in the big agency, right? I mean, I know people
Yeah.
that are going to be at Sapient for life, which is cool. I mean, you know, Ryan Jones too,
Hmm.
incredibly intelligent dude. Um, you know, he's in there. You know what I'm saying? Like, what was it about? Was there anything that you didn't like about that kind of drove you onto your own, or were you just kind of dying to be out on your own?
Yeah, I think that's just like my natural inclination, but it was like a series of things. So, I worked at those two shops and I worked at a couple other, smaller mid-market SEO firms and things. And after seeing all that, I just like I can do a better job than this. And I also felt like you know, all those agencies that I worked in didn't really take care of people in the way I felt like people should be taken care of. And so, one of the things that we've done since we've existed is just like always pay 100% of health insurance or health, dental and vision and all that. And, sometimes I look at the numbers, I'm like, why do I do this? But, but at the same time, it's like a core belief of like taking care of our employees. And there were just so many instances where it was just like the people I worked for didn't care what I was doing,
Yeah.
or they didn't care about the value or like the efforts I was putting in. To your point, a lot of people are just like those lifers. They're very much complacent. They're always just trying to like paint by numbers and do the same thing over and over. And I also feel like that's a disservice to the clients that we work with. It's like they come to you to get a specific result, and you're just focusing on like, how do we show activity to continue to build that hourly fee and maintain your retainers and all that. So our organization is like diametrically opposed to a lot of those things. And, I just felt like it's a good opportunity for me to create what I wanted to work at.
Yeah, I loved Sapient. The people were amazing. The culture and the vibe that they create in those spaces is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But almost to a fault, in my opinion, because what happened was they assigned me to this client who, it was Monsanto. If you're familiar with Monsanto,
Yeah.
like,
Mm-hmm.
just garbage, bro. Like they were paying us millions of dollars to help them spread propaganda, and the people above, like, I get it because but they try to put on like it's this kind of like cool hip vibe, but at the core of it, it's the most ruthless, cutthroat corporate business that there is. Like, they lose a client and like you can expect to get laid off. You know what I'm saying? They don't get paid.
Bye immediately.
Like, gone.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
and at that point too, I kind of realized, I was like, I'm looking at the pack, not to be arrogant, but like, I'm sitting at the top of the pack of the marketers here. I'm better than the people around me, and they're charging so much for my time. And
Mm-hmm.
like, there was just a whole bunch of things that just kind of started to unravel, where I was like, I'm just going to do this shit on my own. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
there's a certain vision that I had in terms of how, if I was a client, how I should be serviced. And you know what it is too, man. Like, they sign a big $1 million contract, and so much of what they're paying for is just sitting in meetings and doing nothing.
Yep.
They're paying for you to go to the client site, sit in meetings
Yep.
all day long, and talk
Mm-hmm.
about nothing. Uh, and I just looked at it, and just my mentality, like, I'm a big proponent of remote work. I'm a big proponent of automation. I'm a big proponent of, just doing things an easier way that business just did not vibe with. Like, dude, we were still pulling reports into Excel. They wanted me to spend 10 hours a week pulling reports into fucking Excel. I was like, yo, there's a better way to do this, but they didn't want to hear it.
Yeah, so that's almost exactly my experience. So when I started working at Razorfish, they dumped a bunch of work on me like my first week, and I blew through it super fast. And I was like, "Yo, do y'all have anything else for me?" And they gave me this 3 million link export from Majestic, and they were like, "Hey, can you go through this and um, you know analyze it, segment it, and all this?" And I was like, "By hand?" And they're like, "Yeah, that way you have something to do." And so I built a tool to do it. It was really similar to this didn't exist at the time, but Epi had a tool called Link Detective. I basically built that before it existed. And I built this thing, and then like I'm super hype about it because I'm like, yeah, I'm showing value, blah blah blah. And I show it to the SEO director at the time, and he's like, "Who told you to build this?" I was like, "Nobody." I just thought it would be a good way to be more efficient. And he's like, "This is terrible for utilization." And I'm like, "What?" Like, and then the ill thing was, I was there, and then a couple months later, the Forrester Wave report came out, and they were like, "Yeah, Razorfish is cool for SEO, but they don't have any automation." And like, I hit up the VP of SEO and I'm like, yo, I'm sitting here building all these tools. What are you talking about? And they were just like, yeah, that's cool, but you know, utilization, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, why am I here?
Yeah.
And you know, that ultimately just kind of set the tone for a lot of the things that I did over the next 5 years. Cause it's like all these agencies we compete with, they are just trying to show activity
Yeah.
and not do the most valuable thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the same reason I still buy banner ads. It's the same reason I still do out of home. Like when we were working with this company, Monsanto, I shouldn't even be saying, I'm going to blur this out later. But, but bro, they were spending 50 million on billboards and just garbage. And I was like, hey, like there's this thing called Facebook that's pretty cool. And they were like, nah, like that's not, and this, bro, this is
Yep.
14. It's not like this was like 2002. You know what I mean? This was like
Yep.
not that long ago. But again, because they just pump so much money into it, it's just a weird system. However, I will say that so much good came from that, because just like you, before I got there, I used to work at Deloitte, but I was kind of like more of a systems consultant, like a process consultant, not so much on like the market and tech side. And like getting in at Sapient and like working with people like Ryan Jones, this guy, Rodrigo, who used to be there, like really, really smart technical SEOs that I had no context for. You know what I mean? Like I knew a little bit about Google Analytics, but things like Omniture, like just different types of tag management, all those sorts of like Telium, like it really expanded my way of thinking and really built confidence in me that I could build an agency too, because I was like, man, like this stuff is vastly underserviced in the smaller to mid-sized agency market. Like these big companies own all this work and they don't really have to, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a way that you can kind of carve out a chunk of that market, which you guys have, which I think is dope, right? I mean, like you're taking a lot of big agency work at a small agency and kind of building it on your own terms, which I think is awesome. So like, I want to unpack that a little bit more too, in terms of the clients that you work with and how you're acquiring them.
Sure.
You speak a lot on stages. I know you're doing it a lot. I know you calmed down for a while. Is that like your main source of clients? Like, how are you getting these larger kind of like tech SEO contracts that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, up until basically like the middle of last year, we had never done any outbound stuff successfully. So prior to that, it was all inbound because someone saw me speak or you know, read a blog post on Moz or something like that. And even our inbound marketing wasn't even like real. You know what I mean? It was just like I'd put a blog post out and wait for the contact form to go off, right? It wasn't like, you know, we weren't doing any like nurturing or anything like that. So it was really just like a direct result of what I was putting out there from a thought leadership perspective. Now, in the last, you know, 6 to 9 months, we've started to like build more of a process, and we have a lot more outbound stuff happening. We've got more content going out. We're doing the whole like MQL to SQL to SAL, you know, nurturing and all that. So that has changed, but like I said, we've got a couple sales guys that are doing outreach and, you know, LinkedIn and all that other stuff. But yeah, all of the big accounts that we've gotten have been inbound or referrals or yeah, I mean that's it. Like it's never been me knocking on doors. You know, it's just been people, because I spent the time to build a personal brand. It's yielded great return.
Yeah, I think a lot of us marketers get in the same position where you rely on inbound to a certain point because you're growing, and it allows you to kind of focus on other things. Because when you got leads coming in, you can focus on the ops, you can focus on the people, but then you get to a certain point where you realize the inbound only takes you so far, and you
Yeah.
got to complement that with outbound. I talked to Chris Dreyer. I don't know if you know Chris at all. He runs a company called Ranks.io.
Mm-hmm.
Revenue. They only work with personal injury attorneys, and they have like 22 clients. It's crazy how much revenue they're doing, and only doing SEO too. But he was talking about how, you know, they got to same thing as us. They got to a point where they had to turn on the outbound, bite the bullet, hire a sales team, and build that out. And ever since then, it's been a completely different game because you're able to target companies. Inbound, it's a mixed bag, right?
Right. You get what you get, right? And that's
Exactly.
it. Whereas outbound is far more predictable. Like, you know, you put X amount of effort in, you're going to get
Yeah.
Y amount of clients out, and then you can make some actual decisions around that. Whereas inbound, it's like, all right, yeah, I wrote a blog post and seems like people are interested. How many leads are we going to get? You know, so I agree. And then the thing is, I think, especially in the SEO space, there's such a stigma associated with anything outbound. And you know, at some point last year, I just realized to myself, I was like, yo, all the people that I really respect as from a business perspective, those are the people that were like, I want this thing. I'm gonna go get this thing. They're not the people that are like, hey, I want this thing. I hope this thing comes to me, you know? And so, because I also felt that way. You know, when I worked at iAcquire, I always felt the way that our sales team did outreach was just so spammy. I was getting so many emails from people that I knew, like, hey, your sales guys are blowing me up, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? So,
Yeah.
like, who
Exactly.
cares?
Exactly.
It's an email.
It's so funny and almost ironic. Like this industry that we work in, the SEO industry, is amazing on so many levels. Like the community, the people, the event. Like it's crazy that you go to events and there's tens of thousands of people at an SEO. It's crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's so many contradictions that I see. I mean, the fact that like link building, which is the most spammy and bullshit form of outreach, is like outreach is the acceptable form of how to get links, but like outbound sales is
It's
frowned
the
upon.
exact same thing. It
It's
is
even
the
worse in my
exact same
opinion
thing.
because you're adding no value. Like people think that like just hitting me up because I have a blog post about SEO means that I want to go in and edit it and link to you is bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Like they misunderstand the exchange of value, which is what sales is about too. The more you do outbound sales, you realize like there has to be some sort of exchange of value, right? Like what can
Agreed.
I give them to entice them? So, I mean, when you guys do outbound, are you giving away like lead magnets? Are you doing like free audits? Are you doing like, what is it that you're using to kind of get their attention to get them into become an MQL?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the outbound side, one of the things that I impress upon our sales guys is offering something of value, whether that's like doing some quick reviews of the site and giving them some clear like pointers. And so they all get walked through like how we actually build our sales decks. And you know, I know you've shared your templates and such too, because I think there's some similarities in like what you do and what we do, and that we do like in-depth stuff as part of our sales process. Like we're not just giving you some sort of like, you know, canned deck that says we do SEO, we can do SEO for you, here's what it costs. Like we're identifying the specific things that we would want to do because our model is deliverable driven rather than hourly driven. We have to figure out which deliverables you need in order for us to work with you. So our proposals can be like 50 slide decks, you know, in some cases. And so to that end, like they know what to look for, at least at a high level, to have a good conversation with somebody. So all of their sequences and such will include those types of data points or those key call outs to make it worth actually talking to them.
Yeah, for sure. We for the agency side, so there's three companies really that I'm managing right now. The Blueprint Training is one. We tried some outbound for that, but it was very difficult. It's training platforms, just people just don't want to hear it. So we've just relied heavily on advertising and content for that. For the agency side of things, with the SEO side of things, I'm just picking back up. I just bought back the rights from the other company I was with a couple months ago, so we're still kind of ramping that up. Got like a managing director in there. But for our other company, I think I've been like pinging you a little about the stuff that we're doing in BigQuery. Basically, what we do is we build data pipelines for companies, specifically agencies, e-commerce, and SaaS companies. And basically, the outbound for that has been working really well because I find that you have to have one of two things. You either have to have something really, really unique that gets people's attention right away, or a very specific pitch that understands who the person is on the other end, meaning I did my research on Mike King. I know that he likes hip hop. I know that he's in New York. I know he's got a 20-person team, and I know they do technical SEO. So how can I combine that into something that is going to make him open the email? We call it dangling the carrot, just getting him to open the email, reply to the email, get interested, you know what I'm saying, all that type of stuff. But the other stuff with BigQuery has been great because we're basically just sending emails to people being like, hey, saw a case study you did for Pfizer, built some beautiful data studio reports. Like we can automate that for you. Do you want to see an example report? It works really, really well. And has been working that side of outbound. Even through this period, we've been closing quite a bit of deals just off that single email. It's been incredible
Awesome.
because it's so different. You know what I'm saying? We're not being like, hello, sir, we do. Do you want to buy some links? It's not like that. And I think I try to impress that on people in our training platform because we have a whole module about outbound sales. And it's like, if you're going to do outbound, and we're selling a commodity, which is SEO now, unless you have some really unique UVP like you guys do with your tech specs or some software that you build, etc. We're basically all selling the same thing. We're selling results and we're selling basically track record, like you've got to really understand who that person is and really get them to fuck with you. You know what I mean? That's really what it comes
Yeah.
down to. And it just takes time, but if you can do that, outbound is by far, like, it's like mind blown for me how impactful mind blown has been. And when I look back, my business partner right now, David, who's the guy who runs our BigQuery platform, I met him through an outbound email he sent to me, which was basically, I saw you wrote about content audits. I can build you a template in Sheets that will automate it. I was like, cool, let's go. You know what I'm saying? There's been like a lot of, and every relationship starts somewhere. You know what I mean? So, you know, I look at outbound sales as just being able to build a relationship with somebody out of the blue. And it just comes with knowing who that person is and how you can communicate with them. Like, and that's the beauty of outbound too, is that I know that you're qualified because I did my research. I know you've got people.
Yeah, you get to pick your clients then. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? Like you're not just like trying to shoehorn an opportunity into something that you like doing. You're like, here's my dream list. Here's everything I need to know about these people. Let me go after them.
Exactly.
And I love that. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, I've really started to enjoy it. And yeah, that's all I got.
and that's where, you know, I think, like, I hate using the term personal brand. It's more just kind of like digital reputation now, for whatever you want to call it. But like, that's where the stuff that you do really comes into play, right? When you're doing outbound, you know, we found having some sort of track record, something that people can do the research on quickly to verify that you're legit. Just that, it's just an instance. They see you speaking on stage, you're like, okay, cool, we passed the test. You know what I'm saying? It goes a tremendously long way. I think I used to approach it like, I need to speak to get clients, but now it's like, I need to speak to get my foot in the door with the right people. You know what I'm saying? And just let them hear what I have to say. So transitioning a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about technical SEO, because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I see that as kind of your main core competency, correct?
It depends how I'm feeling that day.
What would you say your core competency is?
No, I mean, the thing is, you know, as of late, and it's my fault because of the fact that like I wrote the technical SEO Renaissance thing and been just like doubling down on that stuff. But prior to that, I spent a lot of time talking about content strategy and content marketing and all that other stuff. But yeah, I'm happy to be considered, you know, the technical SEO guy.
So at iPullRank, what would you say, just in terms of like hours allocation or deliverables allocation, what are you guys doing most of? Content strategy, is that like the core of your engine?
I would say content strategy and content marketing would represent probably 60% of our billings.
Okay. And do you bulk? So like, are people finding you like that? I mean, that was actually how I think first kind of like, maybe not found you, but really got my attention, was from the Tech SEO Renaissance talk that you did. It was really good. And you find like a lot of people, I don't really consider myself technical SEO. I understand it, so I can appreciate when somebody kind of goes off like that. But did that end up driving like quite a bit of leads to you guys?
Yeah, definitely. We got all types of conversations after that. And, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, I did this, I threw it out there, I didn't think too much about it. And I had been like touring that deck for the whole year. And I think someone from Moz saw it and they're like, hey, it's been a while since you've written for us. Can you just write about this deck? And then it just kind of like blew up again, right? And so it also had a lot of impact where a lot of people were referencing it too. So that it created that, like, I don't know, like that pyramid effect where it's like, you know, a lot of people are reaching out because they saw it initially, and then they're reaching out because they saw something else that was great, reference it. So it becomes like even more of a powerful piece of content. And yeah, we had all types of like big name brands that came to us after that.
So they would come in for that hypothetically, and then want technical work, but then are you just kind of like, well, as you go through the proposal process, you do a really in-depth review, you know, you're like, hey, this is great, we can do a tech audit, we'll find some stuff, but really we also want to do this, this, and this.
Right, because when we go through the proposal process, we're going to have that conversation where you tell me what's wrong, and then I'm also going to look and see what's wrong and say, all right, if this is your goal, cool, yeah, you got to fix your JavaScript SEO issues, but you also need these things as well. Otherwise, this is not going to have the impact that you want. So more often than not, you know, let's say someone comes in and they're like, oh, I want a one-off, like 3-month engagement. We end up talking through it where they realize like, no, actually we need, you know, a 1 year to 2-year engagement because of what you've identified as our problem.
Forget technical SEO, then that can bulk into it, but just in SEO in general, then, I mean, what are you seeing as working? Like, what are your core focuses right now in terms of SEO? What are you seeing that's working? It's tough to make a blanket statement because I know e-com is different than lead gen and stuff, but is
Sure.
there anything that you're kind of seeing as emerging trends in 2020, things that you're really paying attention to?
So I don't know that I'm seeing any like real emerging trends aside from like people being hyper focused on structured data suddenly. More and more people, leaning into the fact that they need to optimize for JavaScript, whereas before it was like we had to convince them that this is a problem. So it's really just like the maturation of things that have been happening for the last like 5 years. More and more people understanding like mobile first is a problem as well. So I'm not seeing anything like dramatically new, but also I am seeing more people be open to what I was calling like technical content optimization. So thinking through like how do we look at the statistical expectations of what's going on in the SERP and then adjust our existing content around that. And we have deep knowledge in that, and it's cool because it sits in the middle of the two things. Like it's both technical and content, and so um, there aren't too many people that have been effective at like articulating that stuff. Like they can be like, oh yeah, TF-IDF, and then you're like, so what does that mean? They're like, I don't know, but I got this tool that does it. Whereas we can talk through like the math behind it and all that, and showcase how people are capitalizing on it, and then also show them how to do it or do it for them. So it's kind of emerged as another differentiator, and it's also something that people are very interested in. When you show them a chart, like an LDA chart, comparing them versus the topics that are, on the pages that are actually ranking, that tends to resonate. They're like, oh, okay, this is how Google is understanding our content. And it's not like we're saying like, oh, we have some, thing about the algorithm that no one does, but that's how they feel about it. Because
Yeah.
it's like no one else is talking to me about all this math stuff, and you're breaking it down in a way where I really understand it. And so we're getting a lot of work where we like basically out of talking about that, and then also out of the opportunity that we can actually do that for them.
So you mentioned that you guys run off deliverables, not hours. Are your deliverables, do they kind of come as a template and then obviously you customize them? And like, if so, do you just kind of roll TF-IDF, the technical content analysis? Is that just kind of like a standard part of your deliverables, or is that only for certain websites?
So it depends on, again, what we identify. Like if the client, if their content is super relevant and they're ranking like number one and they're not having problems with that, we're not going to include that. We're only going to include the stuff that is actually a problem, right? And so what is templated is like the contextual explanations. And what I mean by that is a lot of people's deliverables, they'll be like, oh, you have a problem with rel canonical, but they'll never say what that is and why it matters.
Mm-hmm.
So we have like very detailed overviews of anything possible, right? And then when we're going through it, we're saying like, okay, here's what this is, here's why it matters. And this is also important for there being a ton of different stakeholders, right? Like if you're dealing with content, technical, business, like they all have different varying understandings of SEO. So this is a way to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Gotcha.
But as far as like identifying the issues for you, all of that stuff is always customized. Like we're going into your site, we're showing you the screenshots, the code snippets, and then the very specific recommendations of what to do. And then we also write user stories. So, like you hand it off to a product manager or whoever it is implementing it. Their next step is like, how do I understand this and turn this into a user story so that my developers know what to do? But we're already doing that for them. So it's like, cool, let me copy and paste this into Jira and it's going to get done. So, despite the fact that there may be like, 2 to 3 paragraphs explaining what a rel canonical is that we use over and over, everything else is completely customized.
And how much of your service is strategy and consulting versus done for you? Like, for example, you do keyword research. Do you implement that? You give content recommendations. Do you write it? You tell them they need links. Do you build links?
Yeah, it all depends on what the scope is. So if the client is like, hey, I have a budget of X and it's not enough for us to do implementation, then yeah, it's all going to be strategy work. But if they're like, yeah, I want to build, 1,000 links, and we don't have anyone on staff to do it, and we've got the budget, yes, we'll build the links. And in some cases, we actually do implementation because, like I said, that's where I come from.
Yeah.
And there'll be instances where either they don't have a team of bandwidth or they don't have a team at all that can implement things, and we'll do that for them. So it just depends on what do they have resources for.
Got you. We got a couple questions on Facebook. I'm just going to fire off.
Really?
Sorry, I've been looking at the screen over here. I'm not looking at my girl or anything. I'm looking at the questions popping up on Facebook Live.
I can see in the reflection.
Okay. So John O'Hanlon asks, have you ever done a log file analysis, and when and how would you do something like that?
Johnny O. So log file analysis, we do that a lot, and we typically do it on bigger sites, bigger media sites, bigger e-commerce sites. And the reason why we do it is because we need to get an understanding of what the crawl patterns look like. You want to understand what pages are being crawled that don't need to be crawled. Like, are they wasting a bunch of crawl allocation on static resources? Like, why are they crawling images over and over if those don't change? Are they implementing browser caching, so like 304s and such, so that they're managing their crawl allocation as well as possible? Also, just looking for, how often are 404s happening and server problems and things like that. And depending on what the client has, like we use Botify for most things. If they have their own account and they've already got log file set up, then we'll definitely just use that. If they've got something like Kibana, we can use that. But my preference, if they don't have Botify, is just them to give us a huge dump of logs for as long as they can go back. Depending on the site, especially if it's e-commerce or media, they probably don't have a large window of log files because those files tend to be huge. But we'll just download those and parse them and do all types of data analysis on them to figure out what those patterns look like, and also figure out how we can prioritize those implementations.
Yeah, that was something. So at our agency now, Weber's, as we're revamping back up, we're actually not doing technical SEO. Mm-hmm. So what we're actually kind of trying to do, just long story short, is vertically align all of our companies. So the BigQuery stuff, we basically build deliverables just for using that data pipeline. One of them being what we call a website quality audit, which we use in lieu of a technical audit, because what we're trying to do is we actually don't want to work with big clients. We don't want to work with corporate clients. We're hitting that $2,000 to $4,000 a month range. And usually that means WordPress, probably a lead generation website, doesn't need a whole lot of tech work. Good enough to just do kind of like a cleanup analysis and stuff like that. But log files are something that it's always kind of been the outlier. When we were doing a lot more technical work at From the Future, that was always something that it was always kind of a speed bump because it requires so much effort, and it's not something that you do for every website. It's more kind of like, again, I'm renovating a house, so I have all these I apologize to everyone watching this because I've been giving a shitload of house renovation analogies lately. But it's like if like you're ripping up your floor and redoing your floor or a bathroom or something, and then you get in there and you're like, oh shit, like all this stuff is actually, this needs work. That's kind of like the same thing when you go through an audit and then you're like, well, we can't figure something out, or we're having more issues. A log file analysis would probably be good. But is it something that you guys do for every client, or is it the same thing as a kind of just needs based? And is it something that you identify in a proposal or while the work is being done?
Yeah, we typically identify in a proposal. I don't think there's been an instance where we use it as like an upsell, because it tends to be something that we need to know at the outset. And it's usually a function of the size of the site. So if we're talking about a WordPress site, like you don't necessarily need a log file audit unless it's like a big WooCommerce site. Right. But in that case, you probably have other problems anyway that are bigger. But yeah, it tends to be more for those e-commerce or media sites.
Word. So I appreciate you joining us today, Mike. Is there anything else that I keep calling you Mike too? I noticed that you go by Michael. Is that like a?
Nah, I go by Mike.
Okay.
But I just like when you write my name, like I like how it looks as Michael King.
I got you. Okay.
Than, you know what I mean?
I got you. I mean, I don't. I'm Ryan either way. A lot of people call me too, but either way. So is there anything else you want to shout out, promote? Anything else you want to chat about while we're here?
I should have something to promote, right? Well, no, we did a big webinar on marketing in the age of COVID-19. Cool. I would encourage everybody to check that out. We've got a guide around that coming out soon, and we're adding some more content around like how do you kickstart your marketing you know, as the world opens back up, because right now there's 33 states open, including yours.
Well,
So, you know,
Miami-Dade is kind of it's like people say it all the time. I'm not from Florida. I'm from Miami. Miami
no,
is
I feel
actually
you.
one. That's not. Anyways, continue. Sorry to cut you off.
No, I feel you. It's like, so because I'm from Philly, and Philly is not like being from Pennsylvania. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I get it. But yeah, I would say check that out because we've got some great tips there. And you know, it's one of those things where a lot of people are just kind of like guessing, and we've done a lot of contextual research to understand consumer behavior and how they've changed. I think there's a lot of great insights that everybody can benefit from there. So yeah, that's the only thing I have to promote.
Oh, awesome. Tell the people how they can find you.
I'm iPullRank everywhere. So iPullRank.com, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, if you want to watch me play my kids. And yeah, that's all I got.
All right, man. We appreciate you joining. Appreciate your time. Hopefully everything's going well. Hopefully the family's safe. And we'll talk soon. And if you guys end up coming back down to Miami, give me a
Yeah,
shout.
I'm so pissed because we had scheduled that whole trip as a team, and then that's when everything went.
I remember I was actually looking back when I was, prepping for this interview, and I was like, damn, you hit me up like the week before this shit went down.
Mm-hmm. We booked this, we were about to book this big villa, and we were gonna get like extra rooms and stuff. We had our plane tickets. Like I was hyped and ready to roll. But you know, as soon as things are open back up, I'll be down there. You know.
Yeah, man. Let me know.
All right. Later, Ryan. Thanks.
All right, brother. Take care.